Hello friends, I miss you. I'm happy to see you. I'm going to read a story for you today. It's Sunday. We don't officially go back to school until tomorrow with our distance learning, but it's been a long time, so I wanted to read to you. The story is called The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Stephen Gamble. This sticker tells us it's from the public library. And this is my last library book. And the library book is closed, so I don't know what we're gonna do. The relatives came. Here's the dedication page. It was the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station they had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches. And they came up from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop, and they ate up all their crackers, and they traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Look at how they pulled in. What in the world? Look at their luggage flying off their car. It looks like they crashed into a fence. And look at their family. Are they excited to see them? Yes. It was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. If you haven't seen your family in a long time, do you get lots of hugs? And sometimes when you're feeling so happy to see someone, a little tear sneaks out because your heart feels so good that you're with them. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. They're all happy faces, huh? And finally, after a big supper 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s throughout the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. Look there is even a doggie over here sleeping. This friend is not getting much sleep. She's awake. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend to our garden, and they fixed any broken things that they could find. Someone's getting a haircut over here. They're doing some gardening. Looks like they're building a fort with boxes. It's like a fun summer. They ate up all of our strawberries and melons. Then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. What time did they leave when they came to see them? Was it 4 in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt so big and too quiet, and we fell back asleep. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting for them at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them. And they missed us. It's hard sometimes when you go home after a fun vacation, huh? And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. And there's their grapes that are nice and ripe and dark purple. And that is the story, The Relatives Came.